Datafold automates data testing. What's data testing? It basically is the process of making sure that the data we're shipping to the stakeholders is correct. And for the data to be correct, we actually want our code that processes the data, which is dbt and SQL, to be correct as well. And I want to share a little bit of a personal story of my data engineering days that actually led me to start Datafold 3.5 years ago. So I was an on-call data engineer at Lyft, and I was woken up, I think around 4 a.m. by PagerDuty alarm because some bad data entered our pipeline and stalled Airflow DAG that was computing some really important KPIs that had to be delivered by 9 a.m. because at 9 a.m. the entire company was reviewing metrics. So it was really important to get it unstuck. So I did some quick investigation and turned out to be some values I had to filter out. So I implemented a 2-line SQL filter and everything looked good. I got a +1 from another poor fellow who was woken up by the same alarm. And I merged it, Airflow was green, I went back to bed. You kind of see where it's going. So next day, I come to work, everything seems normal, but at some point, finance team points out that all dashboards are looking really weird, like Lyft's business is just not doing well at all today. And so we got a war room. A war room is basically a bunch of people all in the same room trying to figure out what's happening. We didn't know whether it was a business issue or data quality issue. And so the most interesting fact about this story is not that I was able to corrupt hundreds of tables with a 2-line SQL code change, but that it took us 4 hours in the war room full of senior data engineers, myself included, to actually correlate that change that I made to the anomaly we were seeing. And that led me to think that, well, it's not just, it's very easy to blow stuff up, but it's also really hard to identify issues once bad data is already in production. So that's what we're focusing on Datafold. And enough of me. I'm here to actually introduce our awesome speakers today. So Ravi Ramadoss, who is the Director of Data Engineering at Moody's, and Ran Kelly, Data Engineer at Moody's. If you don't know what Moody's is, it's a really important company for the functioning of our financial sector. They actually determine what securities we can and cannot invest. So take it away, guys.
I think you can have it.
Yes, you have your own mic, sorry.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. Start with the agenda. So we're going to talk a little bit about the company overview, the platform overview, and then the challenges that we faced and how Datafold helped us solve the problem, and finally about the implementation and the advantages of Datafold. So every company needs good quality data, but Moody's especially needs good data. Why? Moody's has 2 divisions. It's called the Moody's Investor Service on the left. They've been providing credit rating opinions for over 100 years. The second one is the Moody's Analytics. This one is more important than that, in my opinion, because they not only provide analytical solutions, trends, and forecasts to the companies, but also to the governments. So imagine what happens if we send wrong trends or forecasts to countries and they make decisions of it. So it's very important for Moody's to have good data. So I am part of commercial real estate. It's a subdivision of Moody's Analytics, and I manage the data engineering and machine learning operations. So today we are going to talk about Keystone. It's the data platform that we have. So the primary functionality of Keystone is to enrich and transform property level data. What is a property in this sense? A property is any kind of commercial real estate, be it an office or a retail space or self-storage locations. These are all properties. And Moody's does enrichment. With Keystone, we do the enrichment by getting data from different sources and then joining it. For example, here you can see climate data, security, tax, loans. These are all put into one single platform, and we send it to our downstream customers, which are API. We send bulk files to our customers. We also have this displayed on our website. There are machine learning use cases where the data scientists take the data from Keystone. They also provide data to Keystone. There is also business intelligence where we run a bunch of reports from it. So we do most of the, not most, like all of the transformations on Redshift using dbt. So we have a pretty good CI/CD, in my opinion, that catches most of the issues. So we have two checks in CI/CDs. Every time somebody opens a pull request, we run dbt tests on it, but we don't run the entire test. We run it with the configuration state modified, so that we only test the models that get impacted. We average around 25 merge pull requests per week, so the number of open pull requests is even more higher than that, and we do not want PR traffic in our systems. So once that is done, the second check happens overnight, where we pull in all the PRs into a different branch and then run a dbt test on every models that we have. So this ensures that all the referential integrity checks and all the data quality checks are passed before the CI/CD actually migrates it to production. So it's all hands off. But if you've been listening closely, you would have identified that the whole CI/CD depends upon the test. If there are no tests for a particular scenario, then the CID is just going to let it pass through. And the exact scenario happened on one of our month-end runs. So during one of our month-end runs, a QA engineer identified that the aggregate numbers that we were projecting for the current month was completely different from the numbers that we were projecting for the previous month. And because of this, we were not even able to deliver the data to customers, so everything stopped. During triage, we found out that there was a single PR that made this happen, but it went through both the quality checks and it was not captured. That's because we didn't have any kind of test for them. So usually, every code that gets merged gets reviewed by another developer, and we review the code to see the before and after, like what are the changes that happens. What if we can actually look into the impact of the change as well? What are the tables that are going to change? What is the actual data that gets changed? So that is more important, and that's what Datafold has allowed us to do, and we discovered this through an accident. I mean, we were not targeting it, but we found it out, and it was really awesome. So every time a PR gets open, like you will see a lot of smudges. I had to censor a lot of data. Moody's is a financial company, so we have to censor a lot of data here. But every time a pull request is open, Datafold runs the checks on the background to see what are the changes that the PR will create without actually merging the PR. So this is very important for us, but we quickly ran into the same problem with the dbt Slim CI, where we couldn't run Datafold for all the PRs, so we created labels. When a PR is labeled Datafold, then it actually runs in the backend. Datafold runs in the backend, it puts out all the results as part of a comment in the PR, and then we can review it. So what am I looking for? I'm primarily looking for two things in the results that Datafold gives. So the first one is, I want to check what is the row count increase or not. Like, if I'm making a change to a filter condition or a join condition, then I expect the number of records to go up. So in this situation, like there is a 19.6% increase in the row count, so which means that, okay, probably I made some changes. If I did not make any change, then I'll be really cautious to go and check, okay, what are the unintended consequences because of my change? The next one is, for records that did not get created new or did not get deleted because of my PR, I want to see what's the difference in the column values. So here there are 328 rows that have been changed for this particular column. Again, it's blanked out. But now I know that, okay, there's a difference. At this point, if I didn't even expect that column to change, it's a red flag. I go back and review and change it. So once that is done, maybe I was expecting the change. Now I want to see what was the actual change that happened. So now we click on the comment and we go into the Datafold UI, and all the top green items are single columns here, like multiple columns, and every column has rows. So here it says that, okay, this value changed from 2 to 0. for this particular column. Now I can go on and check like exactly what value changed. If this is expected as part of the code change, then I would agree. Then otherwise, I'll go back to fixing all the issues. So this is how we use Datafold to make sure that we are also looking at the impact of a code change, not only the actual code change. To talk about the implementation advantage, I request Ryan from my team.
Thank you. Hello, so I'm Ryan. I'm one of the data engineers working on Keystone. So I'm going to walk you through how we implemented this in our CI/CD structure. So at a high level, this is what our CI/CD is. We use the typical Slim CI, which tests all the PRs that go in. Datafold's very easy to just snap into this architecture. It uses the manifest.json file that's created when you do a dbt parse or compile, and then it uses that to find what's changed and then runs a diff. But yeah. So how has this helped, right? So PR quality has gone up a lot, right? So now we have all this information about the PRs and what has changed. So this has really democratized who can review the PRs. Before, you needed to have high level of domain knowledge to like know what the change is actually going to do and what the implications are for downstream effects. Datafold brings more transparency into this. We're able to test things way more, right? So if we make a change on an upstream dimension model, we'll know all the way downstream to the dashboard models what is going to be changed. So like from an engineering perspective, like with 99% certainty, I know I'm not going to break anything, which is really great for me. And then also transparency and everything. One of the problems that we were running into is for a business analyst, right? I can show them the SQL code, the changes that I'm making. They don't really know what that means until it's actually put to production. With this way, with the Datafold dashboards, we can show them exactly what's going to happen, and then they can give the approval if they want to go in or not. So that has been really great. Yep. So some future improvements that we're making. dbt is awesome, and how do we take all the great things from dbt, so like the dbt docs and all that metadata, and share it with other applications. So we are able to share all the column level lineage, as well as descriptions about the columns to Datafold, as well as Calibra, which is our central data dictionary. We're working on refining our business workflow. So who in the business can approve the request, right? Like the change, the logic change. And that helps with Datafold showing exactly what's going to happen. And then empowering analysts to really understand the data better. One of the cool things that Datafold has is a robust profiling application. So with this, we've been getting a lot better requirements from the business. So people are looking at the data, understanding the data, the fill rates, what the values actually look like on a really grand scale. And in turn, the data engineers are getting better business requirements, which is saving time of rework and stuff. And then in conclusion, we started out with DataDiff, which is the open source version of Datafold. We started to see the benefits, so we reached out about Datafold. The review process has reduced the amount of data issues. I get to sleep better at night, don't get waken up. I'm more confident in the changes. So the business is also more confident because they can know, they can actually see what's the downstream impact and then sign off on it or not. As well as we know that we are delivering reliable data to our downstream consumers, our machine learning models. We don't have to worry as much. Yeah. Yep. So,
Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan and Ravi. Really awesome presentation. Thanks for the shout out. If you are considering whether or not to implement CI, you should implement it yesterday because besides Datafold, you actually can do a lot of cycle data quality. So I have a couple of follow-up questions. So you walked us through the CI/CD architecture and kind of how your workflows were impacted. I'm curious what you've seen in terms of the kind of the higher level business impact. So with that architecture, with more visibility in the changes, what did that unlock in terms of the business, like in a larger sense?
So from my point of view, I see that maybe like people have seen it in sprint planning. Everybody's wondering like, hey, who should work on this particular ticket, because there's only a small number of people who know how this data works. And I've seen that that's coming down because everybody can work on it and people can see what the data is. Like instead of having domain knowledge to do that. And last 30 minutes of sprint is not spent like finding out capacity from somebody to do it. So this has been a really helpful thing for sprint planning. That's what I would say.
Yeah. And to piggyback off that, the requirements from the business, because now they have a tool to profile the data, understand the data better. So the requirements in turn have come in better, making sprint planning a little bit easier because everybody knows what's actually wanted. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. What else you're looking to implement to improve kind of this data democratization, if I may say so, in terms of like having people contribute to various parts of the code base and making it easier, lowering the bar?
So one thing is, we didn't talk about this, but main thing, like one of the main things that we use Datafold is to compare data between two separate sources. And kind of we want to see whether they match or not. The reconciliation process, before it was really opaque. Nobody knows what happened, but now the business users can actually see which records got changed, and they can say like, hey, there's a difference of like 1% or 2%. Why did this happen? We've been getting a lot of requests to fix those problems, which we haven't had before, because the business users never got to see what the actual changes. So now, like, I think that's more transparent.
We're just trying to bring out more transparency into our data architecture. So that's the future improvements. Yeah.
That's awesome. I think one of the interesting concerns that I've been hearing when talking to folks in the community about implementing CI/CD was that it feels like a pretty sophisticated system that kind of adds a lot of overhead to the workflow, to compute, and just in general kind of slows the team down. I'm curious with, you probably have one of the most sophisticated both continuous integration, continuous deployment systems implemented together with dbt that I've actually seen in the industry. What have you seen in terms of the developer productivity, kind of how fast you're able to ship? Has it actually slowed you down? Has it accelerated? Has it had no impact?
This is actually easy. Like it's easy to implement such a CI/CD because we did talk to dbt to get the industry practices, and then we can implement it. And I remember the times before CI/CD, we used to have a lot of data problems, like people trying to write code to do the implementation. But now it's all automatic. Anybody sometimes pushes in a code, they know that tomorrow it's going to production. And CI/CD is a big time saver. Like there's been time where for one complete week, we did not have any code promotion because something was failing somewhere. Just think about it. If it had gone to production and failed somewhere else, we would have been in even more problem. Like 1 week of no code promotion is still a pain that I can live with.
Yeah, it's all about trying to prevent issues before they actually happen, because that's usually a bigger time waste than or a time sink, than actually just spending the time on the CI/CD structure. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Ravi, Ryan, thank you so much for the awesome presentation.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Cool. Do we have time for questions, or we're just calling it a day? Cool.
Hi there. Thank you so much for sharing about this. It seems really cool and exciting. I have a question around, from like what you shared, it seemed like mostly what this enables is sort of a manual review of seeing the changes that are made, and I guess I'm like curious if that's accurate and if there's a way to build sort of automated tests also at Datafold, or it sort of relies on just the transparency that's made in a dashboard or something and then relies on business users like going in, being able to think clearly about like what they would expect to see with these changes and like manually review those changes every time.
Yeah, we have a big suite of automated tests with DBT. So the main talk about is like today is mainly about those checks that go unchecked. I mean that go uncaught from those things. So that's where like Datafold is helping. Like we have also given Gleb a feedback. Maybe if there is some kind of alert that throws, okay, this is different. But this is mainly solving that particular problem. But we do have DBT tests in large that catches all the automated problems. But what if we don't know what to test for? Like that's where we need some kind of manual thing. And this usually doesn't happen with all the code changes. It happens with data changes that are touching referential data. So if you change something in referential data, it has a huge impact, and you cannot see all of them in like one or two models downstream.
We also use elementary as well, so that has some statistical tests over time. So you can see over time series if something like goes crazy up or crazy down or out of whack.
Very cool. So this tool really is mostly to help in just sort of like making full visibility that can then be manually reviewed just for like sort of sanity and spot checks by
Yes.
people with like the domain knowledge. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Cool.
Can I say DBT cloud testing is for the functional testing and this is for regression? Datafold is for regression?
I mean, this is like a front runner to create the tests for DBT, right? I don't want to pigeonhole saying that, oh, that's the only thing it does. Like we do a lot of comparison tests. That's where DBT helps to find out like how the data has changed. We do ad hoc testing, like every day APIs run comparing tables between two different systems. But if you see something here, then it finally has to end up with some DBT tests.
Okay.
That way, like you can automate the CI/CD.
I have one more question. Do you use this for any compliance and regulatory reporting, or is it just for internal?
This is mainly for the reviewing PRs. We also have internal reconciliation between sources to review the numbers. So this helps us to make sure that we are on track.
Thank you.
Awesome. Also, feel free to come to our booth one floor up. If you have more questions, we're happy to dive in and show a demo.
I'm curious if your CI/CD checks run the full set of data. You talked about how you select just certain models, but I'm curious if they're running all of your data, because we have CI/CD checks set up, but it only runs a subset of like a random sample of the data. And I'm curious how Datafold works with that kind of architecture.
So how we do it is it's a multi-step process. So we use Slim CI, which will just do the state modified. So whatever's coming in from the PR, the developer then has the option to, if it's a high visibility model, they would put a PR label on there or a Git label for Datafold to run. And then from that would be the manual review from there. And then you can run everything downstream from that as well. And then we do have, every night we run a full integration test. So we run every model downstream every night.
And within each of those models, are you running all of your data, or are you running just like a subset of the rows?
Full data set.
Okay. And would it work if your CI/CD checks are set up to take just a sample of the data?
Yeah, you can configure it to either sample data automatically or to filter it explicitly using like a summer SQL where condition on a model basis in dbt-YAML.
Thank you.
Thanks for your talk. Do you have any experience with getting duplicative alerting around these types of tests? Like, I think there's a lot of other tools that try to do generic data testing or data quality things. So just curious what your experience is with that, if you have any, and how do you think about trade-offs or think about picking best-in-class tooling there?
I mean, one of the things that I know is we use elementary, but like we don't have so many tests enabled for elementary, because if you enable the standard deviation test, like all those things, usually comes with a lot of false positives, and we have to dedicate someone to just babysit it, at least till it gets solidifies. People lose patience along the way. They're like, okay, let's turn off the test, make them into one, so that we can complete our development, all those things. So that's been my experience with elementary.
With data quality, it's always tricky, right? When do you over-test versus under-test? So trying to find that balance is always a little bit tricky. Elementary has a great dashboard to where you can see the failure rates and stuff as well.
Just on that topic, how do you see the DBT test that you have written fitting in with the Datafold monitoring that you have? Is there any overlap, or are they completely distinct?
So Datafold, we are currently not writing tests into the Datafold. It's just like two disparate systems, so that pre-built tests are done in DBT, but exploration, kind of seeing what it actually happens, that's what Datafold does. Overlap I see is you see something in Datafold, then you can convert it into a test. Maybe there's a column that's 100% unique. You know it has to be unique. Then it goes as a test into DBT. Like that's what I've seen. We have used for.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think a really interesting framework to think about DBT tests versus data diff is known unknowns versus unknown unknowns. So with DBT tests, what makes most sense is to codify your assumptions about the business, like certain column has to be unique, certain column has to take a particular range of values, right? But the code coverage with DBT tests is aspirational, right? If you have hundreds of models with dozens of columns, it's impossible to cover every possible scenario, like how data can actually go wrong. So data diff actually captures this enormous long tail of things that actually can go wrong and helps you cover the entirety of your changes by providing you visibility. The downside of data diff, right, it's not like we don't recommend people use data diff in Datafold instead of DBT tests, but in addition to, the downside is that it doesn't tell you whether your data complies with your business assumptions, right? You kind of have to interpret it. That's why I think the most successful implementations, including at Moody's, that we've seen are using DBT tests to test for the most important things that you have to be true about your data, and then using data diff and CI so that you understand exactly what's happening regardless of whether or not you have DBT tests, regardless of who changes the code and seeing your full impact. Any more questions?
Thank you. Thank you for the talk. Great to hear some experiences from the battlefield. What do you think about democratizing and publicizing or making more visible, as you said, these failures on your data? Have it affected the trust in your data? Because I was working in a company where we were striving to do that, and we introduced tests and letting the final users know they didn't see that before, and when they started seeing it, they started not trusting our data, and then we had to be very, very proactive in how to tackle this. So instead of waiting for someone to say, hey, this is not good, we had to put a disclaimer on a Slack channel like, we notice this is not good, we are working on it, and we will let you know when this is okay. So I would like to hear your take on it.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, okay. Obviously, there are people like the same situation. They look at us like, oh, this is wrong. This is wrong. Okay, this column is supposed to be a number. It's a string value. Oh, the median value of a rent is this. Okay, so there are people who look at the data and criticize it, and those are the people we actually need to solve our data problems. I mean, I completely support those people. But what I've seen is after making it transparent, like every day there's an email that goes out to them that's like yesterday's Datafold run. You can click on it and see the difference. And what I feel is they have become more involved in the data. Now they go like, oh, why is this different? Can you tell me why that is different? And immediately, like even this sprint, I have put in some tickets to answer some of the questions. And I think this only increases the confidence, doesn't decrease. Like part of it is political too. You have to get a buy-in from them. So it's basically like when people are bringing up problems, it's because they actually see the problems. It's important to hear it and respond to it instead of hiding it behind some way.
I would say like there's going to be initial shock when you add all these tests. Be like, why is the data like this? But once you get over the amount of shock, like people usually come together and say, oh, this is the problem. And then it really narrows down the scope of the problem, and everybody tends to work better, at least from my experience. We know we found the problem, now let's work towards to solving the problem.
I do know the pain. I remember like when the ticket was going to end, I was like, you are not supposed to release the email until you show me the report, and I give a thumbs up. Yeah. I didn't want to have like complete freak out, but I can sense the hesitancy there.
I was just curious, what are you said that you started with data diff as like the open source piece and then have since expanded to the Datafold. What are like the main benefits you've seen from kind of leveling up to the more involved tooling?
So I started with data diff because I was reading about it on Reddit. I think someone posted from Datafold about how data diff is like a new tool to compare two data sets. So I went and I compared it like staging to production, right? I wanted to see if there's any differences. And I was like, oh, there is differences, And then I started using it for other applications, and it just turned into like my go-to trust engine, right? So I would just run it through, it's just a simple CLI tool, right? Well, it's not simple, but it is a CLI tool, and you can just run it, and you can see differences. So whenever I was making something or making a code change, before we even bought Datafold, I was doing data diffs on my own to make sure that I'm not going to change anything too drastically. And I highly recommend, if you guys are interested in that, download it. It's a Python package. It's awesome. I still use it too, even though I have Datafold.
Yeah.
It's
like actually the difference, I see three differences. Yeah. Like it is good, like it's completely same. Yeah. But like three differences I would say is UI. UI is extremely awesome. Without UI, you'll be like seeing the numbers in the tables, but how do people see it? They want to click on it, dig deep. The next one is running the system. Like running Datafold in itself, it is very resource expensive. Like if you're running it, maybe your system dies down, you close your laptop, EC2 goes down. So I think like they've solved the problem with the cloud. Yeah. That is number two. And then you have history. So what happened to the previous history? And so those are just links that you can click and see. That's been very helpful.
Yeah. The UI is beautiful. Like it's really good and really intuitive as well. And you do definitely get to see more about what's going on with your data with the UI versus the CI tool or CLI. Yeah.
Cool. I think we ran out of time and they stole our mic. So, mic there. Okay, well, we have to wrap up. Yeah, so once again, everyone is welcome to check out our booth. We have awesome swag. We also have delicious coconuts. We ran out of them today, but we'll have more tomorrow, more coconuts tomorrow. So come and hydrate and learn more about data testing. We'll be there. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks
so much, guys.